You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم من هناك لشوارزنيجر
pegarle el Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today. It's Friday. Thank you, Grant, once again for a beautiful day. Not another, because it's been a while, but Duane, it's Friday. We're going to talk about today, of course, the TFC game versus Columbus on Wednesday. We weren't here yesterday. We'll talk about our games of the week. Chelsea going for the title today at West Brom this afternoon. But Duane, we'll start with.
I'm doing well. I'm live on location, doing some work outside in the beautiful outdoors today. So I thought I'd take a half hour to talk to you all and to talk to Kevin. So it's a good day, and it's going to be a good weekend, I think.
Pretty much, yeah. A good weekend for Toronto. It started for a good week at least with a 2-1 victory on the road versus Columbus, the Thrillium Cup. But first of all, behind win against the rival. What's your overall thought on that game?
Well, first off, my first thought is that they weren't playing Montreal, so it wasn't their rival. Why do they have a cup for Columbus, Toronto, but not Montreal, Toronto? Does that make any sense?
Because they use the same flower for the state and the province, basically, right?
Yeah, well, look, if you go back to the late aughts, I guess they call it now, the late part of the last decade, there was a bit of a rivalry back then between those great Columbus teams and those terrible Toronto teams. Not really a rivalry between the teams. It was a rivalry between the fans. And that's kind of where this Trillium Cup idea came from, if you don't know. But there's no rivalry between the fans anymore. There's no anger there. And I suspect a lot of Columbus fans and a lot of Toronto fans that are newer don't even know. But certainly, yeah, the Trillium, the flower, which is a beautiful white wild flower. It's illegal to pick in Ontario. If you happen to see one, they'll throw you in jail, I guess, or something. But
they'll give you a fine.
That is the truth.
I don't think they're really going to throw you in jail, but you don't really want to test it. But without Javinko for the second game in a row, a heel bruise that might be okay for the weekend for the game at home against Minnesota. But it's still a day-to-day, according to Greg Vanney on game day. But Duane, come from behind, and even though PK saved against him, still a good, resilient victory for Toronto?
Yeah, look, this is how good Toronto's season is going right now, is that talk about who's going to take the penalties is really the only concern that people are having right now, because they've missed half the penalties they've been given. But the fact is they've been given quite a few, which I think suggests to you that their attack's moving pretty well right now. And if that's your biggest concern, I maybe your concerns aren't as big as most teams at this point in the season. So certainly in terms of the resiliency to come back in the last 10 minutes, when they look tired is what they look like for most of it, which is understandable since they flew across the continent and back. Even with the squad rotation, you're still, Josie sort of up front by himself for the second straight game, not able to maybe create quite as much as he's able to in Seattle. But then you bring in Ricketts, and this is Toronto's depth. And, the debate in MLS circles lately right now is whether Toronto is, quote unquote, the deepest team in MLS history. And when I say that, don't laugh, because it's not actually as big a compliment or as big a statement as you think, because MLS teams have won.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say it's more indicative of how bad MLS teams have been over the years, more than how amazing Toronto is right now.
And changes in the rules, too. I mean, with GAM and TAM increases and slight increase in the cap, you can be deeper now, and especially we're 10 years into the academy world. So saying that a team is the deepest in history is really just saying they're the deepest in the last 3 or 4 years when the rules have changed to evolve in that. And there's an argument to be that. But the point is they're deep. regardless of where they rank in any sort of list, they're deep enough that you can throw Jay Chapman in and not really miss a beat. They're deep enough that you can sit Javinko for a couple games and you can try and rest him. And that's been, I think, a big part of Greg Vanney's philosophy based on what he learned last year in the playoffs, when we all think that Javinko was hurt from the second leg of the New York game on and not able to contribute to the point that he had all season, and certainly in the MLS Cup final, visible and had to come off for the most part. And I think that they've learned, and if they obviously their goal this year is to win MLS Cup, and they're going to manage Javinko. They're going to manage Josie. It wouldn't shock me if Javinko's able to go either this game or next, whether they sit Josie for a game just to give him some rest, because they can, and that's something that not a lot of MLS teams can right now. But in terms of the Columbus game, back to the rivalry again.
I confused you when I mentioned rivalry. Now it's just Montreal. No, it's Columbus. They beat Columbus.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the Columbus game. Like I said, they look tired, but then they're able to bring Ricketts on, and that added that little bit of spark and sort of the ball in for that winning goal, which at the time when we watched it live, it looked like it was almost a little bit of luck because you didn't see the brilliance of that tiny little touch by Vasquez, which was completely on purpose, get it to the open man. And if you watch the GIF of it, or a video replay of it, Vasquez has his hands in the air before Ricketts even kicks the ball, which if you know Ricketts, maybe he shouldn't do that, but he's new to it. So here we go.
He's not used to playing with Canadian players. There's something with Canadian players and sitters that it's not quite necessarily as easy as it looks. But I just want to go back to Javinko for a second. It's been a few games now, 2 in a row. It's been basically in the last 12 months. He has been injury prone here and there. Yes, the teams are playing hard against him, and but is it a worry in the supporters fan base in the for Toronto front offices, the injury proneness of Javinko over the last year?
Be a bit of a sort of concern for sure, especially when your best player is out. I think that most people are viewing this as more precautionary than truly injured at this point, that he has a bit of ankle soreness, ankle tightness or something like that they're just looking at and going, this is an opportunity. And they're probably speaking to him and saying, look, our goal is we're going to get you your goals. You're going to have your chance to get in the MVP conversation again. You have to massage his ego a little bit. And honestly, that's my biggest concern. Isn't so much that he's going to be hurt for long stretches. I think management's an important thing. I hope that they are doing the right sort of things mentally with him to make sure that he understands exactly what's happening, because in many ways Javinko is his own worst enemy when it comes to that, when he gets pouty and when he gets petulant and sort of becomes a little bit of a brat. And there's no doubt that he has that within him, as we saw just a couple of weeks ago when he stormed off the field when he was subbed out, in the 80 whatever minute. So as long as they're communicating with him, and as long as there's nothing serious happening there and there's no indications there is, then I don't think we're overly worried yet. But if you've ever stood beside Javinko, tiny man.
Yeah. I tower.
It's hard to express.
Like I tower over him, and I am not tall at all. I'm 5 foot. Closer to 8, but not the tallest of men. I'm literally like the average. Like if you picture the average guy, it's like my picture next to it. But
and Kevin, I'm 5'6", and I tower over him too. So there you go.
Well, yeah, exactly. And if it was a hockey game, it would be like so much bigger than Javinko. But it's soccer, and your level of gravity, center of gravity, needs to be low, and that's where he beats all of us. But that's something totally different. He beats all of us in many areas, not just the center of gravity.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, but the point, to bring it back more seriously, when you're that small, even in and especially in MLS, when you are playing against some bigger players, you might in other parts of the world, some of those big defenders, you look at a guy like Nick Hagelin, comparing like Nick Hagelin standing beside Javinko is hilarious, because Nick Hagelin's like 6'3" or something, and Javinko's not. So it's kind of funny to see that. And he gets beat up a little bit, and that is a concern. So again, I think managing is an important thing for them to do if they want to peak at the end of the year, which they clearly do.
Wins in a row. First time in TFC's history that they have achieved that feat. Does it mean anything?
It means that they're going pretty well right now, and points on the board are points in the pocket. That's what it means in terms of what it references in terms of to how good this team is. I don't think we've learned anything, whether it was 4 or whether it was 5 in a row. And with Minnesota on the docket, you would think that 6 is likely. Obviously, I think that they're internally motivated by sort of landmarks like that. Like, they want to keep winning. If they get to 6, then I'm sure that they'll start looking, at the record book a little bit and say, this is a goal that we can go to. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to sacrifice any of their strategies in terms of squad rotation or anything else to make that happen. They have the Voyageurs Cup games upcoming. It's going to be very interesting to see how they manage that with we should probably mention that real quickly too, that Ottawa with the upset over Edmonton, or I don't know, is it an upset or not? We can debate that all we want.
Well, yeah, no, it's even though they're both in United States Soccer Federation's second division. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily an upset, but that cheeky goal by Edmonton, who pulled off the old trick in the book where you keep one guy behind the goalkeeper, so once he puts it down to kick it, you take it back and you score. Yeah, they pulled it off.
I got a goal like that once in my quote unquote career when I was younger. So the goalie just puts it down and you just go boop, boop, you put her in. So it's kind of fun, but nonetheless, yeah, it's pretty cheeky, as you say. You're probably not going to see that against Toronto. I'll be very curious to see what kind of lineup Toronto puts in Ottawa. I suspect it's going to be but nonetheless, I can't even comprehend Josie Altidore going against the USL team at this particular time. His form's pretty good.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll be something to watch. Maybe it'll be interesting. The second leg in Toronto, first leg in Ottawa. I just want to finish on Toronto. You mentioned Minnesota. It's their next game, 3 p.m. on Saturday, tomorrow, at home at BMO Field. Is it a trap game? Minnesota has been slowly but surely climbing up, at least in the points, and making a mockery of how everybody treated them at the beginning of the season. They're not that bad. They've fixed the boat. It's not leaking anymore. It's not necessarily sinking. At least it's maintaining position now. And the Loons are floating ahead and are massing points, gaining confidence, learning who they are, learning their identity, learning the chemistry, learning who they're playing for. It's a mishmash of so many different players from so many different backgrounds that the time together in the first few months of the season was literally needed for them to get to know each other. And now we're starting to see the results. So is it a trap game? Could you see Minnesota come into Toronto and pull off like a result, maybe a draw?
To answer your question, the answer is yes and no. It is, absolutely. You're right. That especially for the reasons you mentioned, but I think especially because of the rest factor that CFC has had to play so many games in quick order that to me is the bigger factor than them mentally letting down against Minnesota. This club is pretty veteran right now. I don't think they're mentally going to take anyone for granted. I truly don't. But your body is tired if your body is tired, and even though they have rotated quite a bit, there's still going to be some question about that on the weekend. And I suspect you will see, again, a lineup that differs from what we saw in Columbus. It wouldn't even shock me, as I said, if they bring Josie off the bench this weekend rather than starting him and maybe giving Ricketts a second start of the season, which is Ricketts is more effective off the bench.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a challenge for them if that's the case. So we'll see. That said, if Giovinco is healthy and ready to go, and I think that they have come out of Columbus specifically with this Minnesota game in mind, internally look to score goals, and that Minnesota defense is still has remnants of what it was at the start of the year, and I think his eyes are wide open thinking about what he can put on the scoreboard this weekend. So I suspect that that's their ace in their pocket that not many MLS teams have.
I have an image of him just looking at the roster and salivating, like, this is going to be fun.
And he's well rested. So that's your caveat to all that I just said. But yeah,
and angry. So actually, if I'm Minnesota, this could be really not fun on Saturday if you're playing against a hungry, rested, and angry Giovinco. Yeah, you better carry some Snickers because you're going to need it.
Yeah, it could. They've improved, and had they not made the improvements that they did, had they not brought Sam Cronin in, I legitimately would be looking at this game as a potential for them to hang something sideways on them. We saw Atlanta put 5 or 6, was it 6, right?
I think so, yeah.
I could see, if that same team was in place, who knows what a Toronto FC firing team could do to them. But they seem to have straightened that around a little bit, and I suspect we will see a very a very defensive approach by Minnesota on Saturday. So they'll probably keep it down a little bit, but it wouldn't shock me if TFC managed to get 3 or even 4 goals in this game.
You are listening to Soccer Today. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Premier League. You can give us a follow on Twitter at 24th Minute for Duane, myself at Kev Laramee, and the show at Soccer Today will be.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we're back, May 12th, 2017. Maybe the day Chelsea wins the Premier League for the second time in 3 years, right?
I don't think it's maybe. I think it's going to be the day. And we'll see. But it would be very surprising if they don't wrap it up today. It's on the road. I suppose that would be a reason they might trip up. But, I don't have because I'm outside. I don't have the standings inside me. A draw does it give it to them as well, does it not?
Gives it to them. We can, us and math, so hashtag math. But right now, Chelsea's on 84 points with 3 games to play, including tonight. Tottenham, 77. All right, so that's a differential of 7 points. A draw would be 8. A draw gives the title to Chelsea, depending on Tottenham's result today. But a result basically gives the title to Chelsea with 2 games left after the weekend.
And look, we declared them champions in November, I believe, did we not?
Yeah, but they had 13 points ahead.
Yeah, I believe that I said it was over after they beat City in the head-to-head back in the first game this year. To be at that point, it seemed over. And look, they've just with under Conte, they've had just such a just so defensively solid. They just don't lose in the way that other teams do sometimes. There have been a couple slip-ups, but by and large, if you look at this Chelsea team, and especially in this era of the Premier League, about a decade ago when new money started to come in and it sort of became a little bit more, a little bit more parity from top to bottom in it, you don't no longer see like crazy, teams run away with 90 points, but you do see teams that are able to sort of win the title with 4 or 5 losses. And this is, I think, what Chelsea's just look like all year. And they're going to be absolutely the favorite. They were the favorite last year. We don't, under Mourinho, a lot going on, and they probably should be 3 in the trot right now, and they'll absolutely be the favorite next year.
And last year's
in the Premier League.
No, so yeah, exactly. Last year's a total fluke. Just seeing the 1 year ago memories on social media and on the TV channels right now to talk about Leicester. Remember that Monday where Tottenham and Chelsea? I think it's exactly 1 year to the day on Monday, right? And you saw Vardy and company at Vardy's place celebrating Leicester.
Vardy party.
Yeah, the Vardy party. The Vardy party. That should be like a dance or something. The Vardy party. That's how it
probably was
like.
At some point.
Oh, yeah. It involves maybe some illicit things, but that's something else.
Oh, look, what it is about Chelsea, I think, that makes them the best team right now is that second word I just said there is team. They have balance in a way that no one else has within the Premier League right now. Like, you look at sort of a team like City, which has a lot of attacking talent, but can't defend to save its damn life and doesn't particularly have a keeper at the moment. That's just one example. There's just lots of there's no other team that has the same level of balance across the roster and plays as solidly under a consistent system as Chelsea right now. And I call them the favorite for next year already, because they're going to come back much in the same way. Yeah. Obviously, you're going to see much different looking Manchester clubs. You may see a different looking Arsenal club if they do make a change at the top.
Tottenham?
So there will be lots.
You expect Tottenham to go splurge some money, which would be very un-Tottenham-like, but they're going to Wembley. They'll need maybe a different, because they're going to Wembley for the 1 year until White Hart Lane Stadium opens, and the new one, basically. So maybe Tottenham's going to splurge. But just to finish on Chelsea, there's a caveat this season that there were no European competition. It's a lot of fixtures that are taken off your calendar that you can focus on your primary target at the Premier League. Do you think, Nick? Because I'm biased in this discussion, so I'm asking you. Do you think next year, even though you mentioned you already see them as favorites, do you think that their European presence next year might make it more difficult and need to be even more deep than they are right now?
Well, we'd be disingenuous if we didn't point that out as a factor, because we talked about that in the past. We talked about that about.
Well, Leicester won last year with no Europe, Duane, with no European game, and Chelsea this year, like twice. If it happens again next year, then I don't know. Arsenal, United's out of Europe basically as of right now, right?
Well, I'll go back one further and say that Liverpool should have won the title
and no Europe. So it would have been 3 in a row.
Europe that year
In 2015, it would have been 3 in a row. But so is that a trend that's starting? That actually the congestion of fixture in England Premier League calendar included with the FA Cups and the whatever cups and the whatever leagues plus the Champions League or Europa League, is it too much? And do we see a trend now that teams that are not playing in European competition focuses on the league and gets the job done? Are you there, Don? Live radio, folks. All right, Duane, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah, sorry. We had a Bluetooth issue. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all. I was just saying, is it a trend that you're seeing, literally, that no Europe, like, do you see it continue?
The depth of the Premier League is what I think allows this to be a factor in a way that it might not be in a league like La Liga, where, essentially there's maybe 2 or 3 teams at the top that are way above the others, or maybe 4 at the top end. I mean, that said, La Liga has a lot of strength too that we don't necessarily notice because of the disparity between the top. But yeah, it will be a factor, but I do believe that Chelsea is a club. Chelsea's not Leicester or Liverpool for that matter. And both of those clubs that we mentioned a second ago in this were overachieving in a little bit in Liverpool's case and a great deal in Leicester's case. And Chelsea is achieving the level that we think. Certainly it helped them. Certainly they'll have to factor that next year. I think maybe affect them is they may pull the double off this year. And I don't think that you're necessarily going to see a lot of doubles and certainly no trebles anytime soon. There's never been a domestic treble in England, so that's not a big statement. But it's going to be difficult for teams to compete in Europe and on the FA Cup and in the League Cup and to compete in Europe and for the league as well. So I think that's where you might see it with Chelsea. But in terms of them being able to handle a European season and also a Premier League season, I think that's where their focus will be. So, they'll likely maybe struggle a bit more in the cup competitions next year, but I see them remaining pretty much where they are.
So West Brom, Chelsea, 3 p.m. on Friday today, this afternoon at night in England, English time. So that is something to watch. Chelsea going for the title, but this weekend it's 3 weekends to go, 3 game day to go in the Premier League. Man City, Leicester tomorrow morning, really, really early at 7:30 a.m. Duane, Manchester City needing to get some points to continue and get a European spot. It's getting really in the 4th spot. Arsenal are 3 points back. Man City, with the win against Leicester tomorrow morning, pretty much guarantees a Champions League spot.
I will say that this is the game left on City's schedule that is make or break. If they lose this, they still have a chance because of Mourinho's choice to focus on the Europa League, which so far is so good for them.
Well, there's one game to go, and if they win that one, they're the Champions League. So I guess it's easier than 3.
Yeah, so that choice there, I think, pretty much guaranteed City 4th. But the Leicester has been a bogey team for them over the past few years. So we'll see how this goes to tomorrow. It's certainly not one that, as a City fan, if I'm just putting my fan hat for a second, I have a little bit of trepidation to it. But if you deserve to be in Europe, you should be able to beat a struggling Leicester side, a mid-table Leicester side at this point. And that said, I do think that this is the game that will decide one way or another. And even if they do lose, they'll probably still squeak in. But if they win this one, then I do think that their focus will be really in Liverpool, and so they can avoid that playoff in August.
Sunderland Swansea, a game that would seem irrelevant, and it's kind of is, except if you're Hull City, where you actually want nothing to happen, no team to score, and every team to get out with a draw. Because, well, no, the best case scenario would be a Sunderland win, to be quite honest. That would be very these chance. Hull are on the brink. They're 1 point, even though they're having a tremendous result at home with Marco Silva since his return. Not all the games are played at home. Some are played on the road, and you're actually on the road in London against Crystal Palace on Sunday with the most important game in probably Hull City's history if they beat Crystal Palace, which Crystal Palace are on a very difficult run over over the last month, playing top teams and actually getting results. Could be a tired factor. Hull City needs a win to give them a chance to not be relegated.
They're not officially eliminated with the results going the wrong way, but they practically are this weekend. So yeah, that is sort of another place to look. It's not been, I always think relegation fights and people that talk, eloquently about how exciting relegation were stated, but this one in particular hasn't necessarily been the most compelling of relegation battles. But
at least Hull and Swansea are battling. But you mentioned how I equivalent to, like, you have a sporting event where it's fun, then you have like something that you're not sure if you watch. It's like I don't know, a contest of two guys pushing each other close to a ledge. You don't really want to see it, but you kind of want to see what happens. You hope everybody's going to be okay. You hope nobody lose their job or their life, in the analogy I'm making, but you hope nobody falls off the cliff. But it's kind of like it's intense. There's a suspense. There's a thriller. I don't know if fun would be the right word, though.
Yeah, look, there's been a few seasons. I think back to Fulham and their Great Escape, which is going back almost a decade ago now. There's been some teams that have sort of reeled off several wins in a row, and that is exciting. And, you watch them, you thought they were dead, you see them pull it back up. That has an element of excitement, as I said, to it. But kind of this year where you just have teams that are sort of backing into it, it's not really that compelling to me anyway. But I kind of, that said, I've nothing against what. There's something a little bit compelling. It's not quite a great escape, but it's a mediocre escape anyway by Hull if they do manage to pull themselves up from bottom of Christmas, I believe, which I don't think any team has ever been able to do that. Although I could be incorrect. It could have been Sunderland bottom at Christmas, but they were certainly down there.
Yeah.
And it'd be a mediocre escape is what I'll call it. Yeah.
So Sunderland Borough going down, and the one spot left will be either Hull or Swansea. Crystal Palace seems to be okay, but their two last games are not going to be easy either. So you never know, actually. If they lose to Hull, then if they lose the other two games, and Hull and Swansea might surpass them, and Crystal Palace still might go down. Sam Allardyce never went down as a manager of a Premier League club. Maybe this year, but they probably
I'd be pretty shocked if Crystal Palace goes
exactly.
Down,
and Crystal Palace has a better team on paper than Hull City, just with the likes of Benteke. So I wouldn't be surprised if Crystal Palace actually drives the last nail in the coffin of Hull City and puts the Tigers back in the championship.
Which, the Tigers are the epitome of a yo-yo team, really, at this point, right? So, it wouldn't be that shocking for them to go down.
Now, Tottenham, Man United on a Sunday as well, and Monday. The calendar is congested at this time of year. It's going to finish pretty soon. We're mid-May. And on Monday, Chelsea, Watford. Tuesday, Arsenal, Sunderland, Man City, West Brom. Quick turnaround as well. Wednesday, Southampton, Man United. Thursday, Leicester, Tottenham. A lot of games. And at the end of next week, about who finishes where. But again, today, 3 p.m., Chelsea wins the league.
And as soon as it ends, we start to gear up for our Gold Cup coverage. We've got, I don't know how much U20 coverage we'll have on here. The sport just never stops, Kevin.
It doesn't. It's like it just never ends. And speaking of not ending, tonight, Houston, Vancouver at 9 p.m. Tomorrow morning, 3 p.m., sorry. Tomorrow, Toronto, Minnesota, Colorado, San Jose, Montreal, Columbus, maybe the debut of the brand new designated player for the Montreal Impact, Blaren Zamali. And if you're wondering who is Blaren Zamali, I invite you to take a listen to the latest Off the Woodworks that I made last weekend, where I actually talk about who is Blaren Zamali. On Soccer Today last week, we did a show as well, about 15 minutes on his career, his history, his story, and Zamali It's kind of hard to say with some coffee in your mouth. But Blair Damali is going to probably play. I don't know if he'll start, but I wouldn't be shocked either if he starts. And we're reminding everyone, $1 per ticket sold for the Montreal Columbus game will go to the Canadian Red Cross to help with the flooding victim in eastern Quebec and southern eastern Ontario as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's a very cool feature the Impact put on their YouTube page, Zamali's career, where they use Google Maps to great effect. So I encourage you, if you're a bit of a geography nerd like me, to go watch that. You get to see sort of the topography around the stadiums of all the stadiums he played in, and sort of they swoop in and out. It's kind of cool. But yeah, for sure, in terms of the flood relief, by all means, if you're in Montreal, there's always a good reason to go watch the Impact play, but there's even more reason this weekend. You're going to help a little bit out to folks that have had their life turned upside down by the natural disasters that are happening right now.
And a lot of great games as well. DC Philly, can DC continue? A surprise, like they had a good season. They surprised when it gets Atlanta a few weeks ago. DC United are quite surprising. Yeah, they lost to Montreal last week, if I remember correctly. But still, a DC United surprising beginning of the season, and Philly, well, that could be dangerous for Philly. Orlando SKC though, Duane, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. That's an interesting matchup. Orlando, maybe the best team, at least right now on paper, the team with the most amount of points.
Yeah, no, for sure. Lots of interesting stuff. I'm curious to watch Atlanta to see whether they can bounce back a little bit. With them being MLS Cup contenders anywhere, so so we'll see how they.
It kind of died down, and the chatter about Atlanta kind of just died down just a few levels back to where it actually should be, where maybe down the road there'll be a playoff contender team, this position 7 to 5 maybe. But it's going to balance each other out, and now they really can't wait for the return of U.S. Martinez.
No, precisely. And the other team that I'm always curious to watch right now is Orlando, to see whether they're for real or not. They certainly looked very good against Toronto on that midweek, or so that game on Friday night a week or so ago, that Toronto managed to win, but maybe got a little lucky on. So certainly they looked for real that night, but then they followed that up with pretty much a stinker. So always curious to watch that, Kevin.
You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. You like the show, you want to make sure you can still listen to the show without hitting that annoying paywall. And we understand that's the last. Not want to put a paywall, but we do need your help. Do like Zachary just did right now. Go to patreon.com/sports podcasting network. That's patreon.com/sports podcasting network. $1 goes a long way, and with your help we can continue to do this and to give it to you as you are doing it right now. And until Monday, as always, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.